and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. My name is Richard, and I am joined unusually by my friends Michael.
Howdy.
And Jeff.
Hello.
Everything's gone haywire this week. Those of you who are fans of the show and been with us for a while know that at the end of the year we like to mix things up a little bit, kind of get wacky with it. And while it's usually Michael and myself who are debating, and Jeff who is the host and judge of the show, we take a couple of weeks where we switch seats, and Jeff gets to be in the hot seat of choosing.
Yeah.
Things. How's that seat? Pretty hot, Jeff?
Oh, it's
Sizzling?
warm, it's sizzling.
Nothing like hot CrossFit buns over here. So we are the next couple of weeks. We're going to be mixing it up. Next week, Michael is going to be judging and hosting the show. But this week, it's my turn. So this week's topic is...
Welcome, Your Highness.
Yeah, I did
Gotta
have...
butter him up early.
I did have Jeff build me a riser with a throne so I could look down on you just for this week.
It's very rickety, so be very careful. No sudden motions.
He built it with the gavel in your hand now, so those nails might not be actually fully inserted into the wood.
It's the judge's gavel.
So if I die midway through, you guys know what happened. So this week's topic is sploitation films. And who chose this one? Oh, I did. Why did you choose this, Richard? Why? Let me tell you. I just did a Jeff thing right there. That's very much a Jeff move. I love sploitation films.
Oh, shit. He's going to know that I don't know any of this.
I grew up in high school, junior high, watching like Night Flight.
Oh, yeah.
And like all those kind of like really terrible movies that would come on late night on the weekends or what was USA Up All Night or just stuff that you would get in the random corners of your local video store.
Yeah.
And we would,
Les Bad Cinema, I think is what Blockbuster called it.
Exactly. And my friends and I we would have like bad movie nights in high school where we'd go over to someone's house and stay up all night and drink sake and watch these really terrible, bizarre exploitation type films.
You are the guy wearing a bowling shirt.
I am.
I love this guy.
I'm Cameron Davis. No, it's something that I have enjoyed from a younger age, and I'm curious to find out what your guys' take on this. So we are going to start with the person. You guys are the man with two heads right now.
Okay.
So to speak. But
clock, tick-tock,
So I'm going to choose the one who reminds me most of Blackula, and that would be Jeff.
Okay. All right. Funny, Richard, I knew of Night Flight as, for some reason, I thought it was just the thing that played music videos. And I rediscovered it again as the thing that they're streaming all these bad movies on it now.
Yeah, they've got a whole streaming service now, which is supposedly fantastic.
That's pretty cool. My first choice was the first exploitation film I ever saw, and in a movie theater, and I was 9 years old, and I think it was Michael Curry's birthday party, and it was March of 1977, and we went to see Supervan, which was an example of the vansploitation craze. And this is a real thing, according to Wikipedia, a term used for a genre of American independent film from the 70s where vans are a quote, key element to the plot.
That's ridiculous. Oh, by the way, this is where I did like 98% of my research in the last 7 minutes was Wikipedia.
Other examples are The Van, Van Nuys Boulevard, CB Hustlers.
Van Nuys Boulevard.
Yeah.
Van, get it, Van Nuys.
Blue Summer, a.k.a. Love Truck. So Supervan was, for 2 months, the coolest movie I'd ever seen, because I had only seen a couple movies in the theater that weren't rated G. The coolest movie ever seen because Star Wars was going to come out in May. So in March of 1977, this film, directed by Lamar Card, about a young man who quits his job at his dad's garage because he's got a chance to do something amazing, meaning drive his van to the Invitational Freakout, which I didn't know at the time when I was watching the film was actually held in Kansas City. So upon rewatching this film, I got it on DVD, and this van in the Invitational Freakout was actually held in Kansas City, where I'm from. So that's super cool to me. So a boy meets girl, and his van called the Sea Witch gets crushed by a competitor, and he ends up getting a van called Super Van. That is a George Barris, not Chuck Barris.
That would actually be more fitting.
That would be
a Chuck Barris production.
It got going. It's built on a 1966 Dodge A100 platform. The Super Van was created by the legendary George Barris, and if you just Google Super Van and Barris, you're going to see it. But
so I have just a quick general question about these exploitation films of the
vansploitation
60s and 70s and onward. It was just like someone decided at some point that we were just going to make a bunch of movies terribly about a specific thing, and the genre will be applied later. Like vans, for example.
Yeah.
Were people excited about vans? It was just like everyone was just into vans for a particular time, so now it has become a thing.
Yeah, basically. I mean, there was
This can apply for anything in this area of cinema, as Martin Scorsese would like to talk about.
I think if it is a market-driven genre, which it is, your first consideration is commerce. Is there a trend to exploit? And
would you go see a movie today because of the van?
Ironically, yeah.
What is the thing that you would go? I don't know. I'm just curious about.
Well,
general. What would I go
let me
see?
just say, Star Wars, is a genre. There was a genre film that transcended it, and there's another one of my choices. It was a genre film that transcended it ultimately, but I mean, right now, I can't get enough of The Mandalorian. But everything about it is based on genre tropes from westerns and things like that. So, I mean, I'm watching that now and loving it. I'm not saying it's exploitation necessarily.
Yeah. Well, I would say
it's not cheaply made.
I would say this: there's an element of something being cheaply made.
Yeah.
Most your exploitation movies are low budget. Yeah. They are typically like you hit on the head. A lot of the times they are trying to target a certain genre or a certain target audience that is very specific.
Yeah.
So the vansploitation movies and any of or I would even extend this to the car culture movies of the 70s. Something like a Corvette Summer.
Yeah.
Or something
Easy
like
Rider
that.
was an
exploitation movie. Yeah. There was a van craze back in this custom van craze back in the 1970s. And so this is clearly a bunch of low-budget filmmakers going, if we can spend $200,000 on this movie about a van, and even if just the people who are really kids who are really crazy about vans go to see it, we're going to make our money back and then some.
Yeah.
So it's something that you expect to be able to make some money off of it on a low budget, regardless of quality.
Yeah.
I think that's certainly an element to it.
It feels like exploitation, this genre, has basically been disseminated over Tumblr. You can just go onto Tumblr and see every van you ever wanted to see. Back in the 60s or 70s, I'm guessing that you had to go to the movie theaters to see these vans in particular, or whether it was another sort of genre that you were into. Now it's just all right, I'm going to hop on Tumblr and see what's up with the bronies.
Yeah.
The two vans that are featured in this movie, by the way, one was called Vandora.
Yeah, Vandora was actually a super van. Was Vandora? Yeah.
And then there was a second one that was solar powered, called the Sea Witch.
Well, that's funny because I think the Sea Witch was the kid first has the Sea Witch, and then
our apologies to all of the super van fans out there that are
super
yelling at
van
us,
fans,
that are just correcting us, being like, "No, the Sea Witch was."
Well, it's just so. It wasn't an amazing film. Its longevity, however, the Supervan outlived the film in different iterations. It showed up in the 1986, this is where I go a full Wikipedia on you guys, a 1986 made-for-TV movie, Condor, repainted gold and black. It was in Back to the Future 2 as the Hill Valley Transit bus painted green. In the 1990 movie, Solar Crisis painted white. So it was the space van in a lot of future shows.
And I am reading about this movie now, and featured a cameo by, you know this one. Do you remember?
No.
Charles Bukowski.
Holy snap.
Because that's what's going to get the kids in 1977 into the theaters.
That's hilarious.
Freaking Charles Bukowski.
I think now that you've mentioned that, I think I recall him in the big van freak out scene.
Are we sure that he actually knew that there was a movie taking place?
Yeah, I don't know.
Where he just got drunk, crawled into a van, puked up a bunch of wine, and passed out.
He does look like he could be any one of the Freak Brothers or some from an R. Crumb character or something. he does look like a drawing.
Boy. All right. That's the first one.
That's my first.
So that's Jeff's first. Michael, your turn.
Richard, you alluded to it in your opening statement. Blackula.
Of course.
You have to talk about Blackula.
No, of course.
Whether we're talking about it in terms
remiss not
of the
to.
1972 film about a Black Dracula or
Yeah.
of the Simpsons reference, the Blunch Black of Bloat Your Blame. Which might be my favorite. One of my just top 5 just nonsense Simpsons things. The idea of just, you got Dracula and make him an African-American gentleman, make him a black guy, and throw him in Los Angeles and have his coffin be purchased by a couple of gay guys in L.A. and have him, reign terror as a vampire down on L.A.
You've improved on Bram Stoker so mightily.
This is just, it's the story of Prince Mamuwalde, who is turned into a vampire by the actual Dracula, who is engaged in his slave trade, because of course.
Yeah.
That's what Dracula would do.
Yeah.
And comes to L.A. and gets involved in street crime and it is everything you want out of a campy horror genre, as well as African American guy kicking ass and taking names in Los Angeles.
Is there a Blackenstein?
There was a Blackenstein as well.
Oh, wow.
Just add a little African Americanness to any sort of. Was there a black mummy? I don't know.
I don't know.
A black creature from the Black
Creature
Lagoon.
from the White Lagoon.
Creature from the Blacker Lagoon. I have seen Blackula. It is not as terrible as you would think it would be. I mean, it's not good, but it's shot on a budget roughly similar to our podcast. But is it any worse than the Hammer Dracula films that they push out every couple of years? Mm-hmm. No, it's not. It's got some funny moments. It's just different, and it's one of those ones that's just become the shorthand now. And I think that's why it's so big in popular culture, for just shoehorning a blaxploitation film into another genre.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's become known for now, instead of anything having to do with the movie. People reference Blackula who have never seen it, don't really know anything else about it, but just know it's Black Dracula. It isn't kind of fucked up.
It is such a compelling. You think of these films as being market driven. They probably had to make up their money on a really short time, and they had to have such a strong hook. And I can't think of a better name than Blackula. That is so, exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to explain itself. It's so good.
No, you don't need to explain. I mean, I appreciate you giving us the plot. No explanation was needed. The only other movie I could think of that kind of hit on this sort of topic was the Eddie Murphy one, Vampire in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which just sucked. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
If you're going to choose between the two Black Dracula movies, Blackula is 100% the way to go. So that's a good first choice.
Right.
By the way, I'm going to rush you guys along because I got a Zumba class I got to get to in a little bit.
Oh,
so
understood.
Don't sweat it.
Understood.
Jeff, what's your second choice?
Okay, my second choice is going down the road a little bit farther. Now, this is really falling into two genres. The first I want to pick, because I think it's so novel, I'd never read it before, Ozploitation. Films that were leveraging the beauty and vastness and ruggedness of Australia.
Oh, I thought you meant like L. Frank Baum's
No.
Oz.
No.
Like with a buxom Dorothy or something like that.
Yeah, or Black Sabbath. No, this is Mad Max from 1979. So I saw this in junior high, and I should say I first saw The Road Warrior, which was Mad Max 2, and then found this on VHS. And it's the only film I've ever seen where the people are speaking English, but it is dubbed. Because their dialects were so thick, which is ironic because their lead character, Mel Gibson, is Max Rockatansky, is an American native. Mel Gibson lived in America, I think, till he was 10 or 11 years old.
Right.
Then went to Australia. So he was only in Australia for about 10 years, 15 years maybe by the time he made this film.
Really? I didn't know that about
Yeah. Yeah. So, but he's being dubbed by an American or an actor without a thick Australian dialect. Okay, so if you don't know, this film takes place in a dystopian Australia in the near future, which was something they did establish via a prologue at the end, where they realized this film doesn't look normal. Let's pretend it's in the near future. Let's.
That's what Australia looked like in the late 70s, early 80s. A dystopian hellscape.
This was done so cheaply but it definitely guerrilla filmmaking. The crew would close roads without filming permits, not use walkie-talkies because their frequency coincided with the police, and the police would hear them. Definitely done on a low budget. Mel Gibson says he used to carry the camera, he used to carry gear to the set every day, even while he was working on the thing. But I loved this because it, alongside with Blade Runner, were two sci-fi or fantasy films that painted a unique vision of this future gone wrong, and it was so compelling to me. So, I think George Miller does such a great job, along with the screenwriters, of creating this world that seems like it makes sense. Like Star Wars has a used universe, and it feels kind of lived in, and Mad Max has the look of a civilization of people who weren't expecting the apocalypse to happen. And after, they just had to make do with whatever bullshit was sitting around, like football pads and baseball bats and whatever shitty cars that they had, soup them up with whatever they could find. So
it is literally, in a lot of ways, the perfect movie to make on a shoestring budget.
Yeah.
Because it's almost a meta commentary on we have to make do with what we have.
Yeah, and the junk that they put around, or they gather together to fight against these gangs and things that are now controlling their world. So I freaking loved it. And from an exploitation standpoint, by the time the Road Warrior came around, it was a little bit less lurid. There's still like bloody fingers getting chopped off by boomerangs, and there's still rape or this ugliness.
Right.
But Mad Max is crude. There's some real rough stuff going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is, I think, a rare example of the exploitation film that becomes a crossover success.
Yeah.
That becomes seen as not just something that makes money, because certainly there have been exploitation films that have become money makers, but something that also became critically accepted.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that I'm looking at right now. It's got 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, which I know isn't the be-all, end-all. But I think it goes to show that even in its time, it was something that was made for more than just let's try and generate some shock and some cheap sort of like gross out or, cheap thrills and make a little bit of money and get on to the next thing. There was obviously, George Miller had a vision, an artistic vision behind it, even though he was playing in this sort of, futuristic genre, which had been kind of well worn by that point. So I just find that movie, and it's one of the things I've always found interesting about Mad Max, how it kind of towed the line between being sort of being schlock and being something that's actually has artistic merit.
Yeah.
It's weird because, I don't know if I don't think I've seen the original one, because I think I was totally pulled into the fantasy elements of the Road Warrior.
Yeah.
And definitely, when you get to Beyond Thunderdome, and it's just everything is kind of, it gets crazy. It starts off as just like this revenge fantasy, the cop, but then I don't know if that was when I was a kid and to see it, if that was enough to hold me in.
Yeah.
Like it needed the guy flying around in the gyrocopter and like the wild feral boy to do whatever.
It's definitely not a movie for kids.
No.
Mad Max, the original Mad Max.
I will say that what I had originally in this slot, Death Race 2000, which I got to see at the Alamo Draft House in Minneapolis recently, and I can't say it's held up for me because I never saw it as a younger person, but Death Race has more
Wait, you talking about
commentary.
Machine Gun Joe Viterbo?
Yeah.
Well, definitely. So we've got David Carradine as the president, right? Or
No, he's
no,
no,
he's
not the president.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I thought he was also the no.
I think he winds up.
Thinking myself, I know this movie backwards and forwards. Why didn't I think of this movie?
Oh,
for-
well, hey, tell me what you liked about it because
maybe I'll substitute that in. Maybe I'll substitute one of my other films for this one because I know Death Race 2000 like the back of my hand.
yeah.
Death Race 2000 is an incredible movie. The idea is that sometime in the future there is this kind of quasi game show where drivers get in there, mock. What's the thing that Speed Racer drives?
Mach 5.
The Mach 5. It's
Yeah.
like these Mach 5
Yeah.
type sort of race cars.
Yeah.
And it is a cross country race that you're effectively involved in where you get points for murdering people
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
It's like the Cannonball Run times murder.
It's like wacky races,
Mm-hmm.
but
With death.
You run people over and you get extra points for running over like ladies and people pushing.
Right, because there's, if I remember the plot correctly, the world has been overcrowded. Overpopulation is so much that they're trying to find ways to like thin out, especially the older people, which is why they're worth more points than the average person.
Yeah, that's right. There's a moment where an old age home would kind of push people out in their wheelchairs while the race is going by, so
Yes.
just they could just
Thin out
shred
the
them
herd.
down. But yeah, that's funny. I
So
think
is this
I
the-
think I owe this has been audibled into my next pick
Is that your next pick? Okay.
because I think I overthought this too much.
Oh.
And I didn't think of like the films that I had seen, and I don't know what I was doing. But this is definitely one of the most wonderful low key. Sylvester Stallone is the aforementioned Machine Gun Joe
Yeah.
Viterbo,
Yeah.
calling his girlfriend a baked potato, and David Carradine is eventually President Frankenstein.
Yes, by the end, that's where you were getting
Okay.
this.
Yeah. Mike, the reason
A
why
character not unlike the Mandalorian, who will not remove his mask the entire time.
so I think this is a good choice, but the reason why it came off my list
Thanks for giving me
was
basically.
I found even though both of the Death Race 2000 and the Road Warrior were commentary, I feel like the commentary in Death Race slowed the film down for me a little bit. So there were some actual romantic scenes in Death Race where he's betting the reporter, and it actually turned into a movie for me. And from an exploitation standpoint, I remember thinking, get back on the road and kill some people, because it got into social commentary in a lot of the satirizing journalism, TV journalism, with the real Don Steele as this reporter guy who's tying the whole film together. So at that point, if paired against the Road Warrior, Mad Max, I would have picked the Mad Max under the category of exploitation. This is Death Race 2000 is better satire, I think.
I guess so.
Yeah.
It's funny to see like threads of this in a film like Running Man,
Yeah.
where just the commercialization of murdering people and people just buying into it.
Oh, yeah.
It's just it's
Yeah. Or The Purge, or any of these.
Pilling has become
Televised sport, yeah.
part of the American.
Directed by Paul Bartel,
Yeah.
also director of Eating Raoul,
And
another of the cannibal,
Yeah.
I guess, exploitation.
I will
movies.
say that was one of the ones that kind of led me to Death Race, because Eating Raoul was a favorite of me. I think it was on Cinemax or something like that.
Sure, yeah.
I watched it a lot, but I remember thinking it was almost too. It definitely has a cannibalism in it, but it's kind of all more in the realm of kind of a black comedy. I think.
Sure,
Yeah.
which I think Death Race 2000 has definitely elements of black comedy. It is an example versus a Mad Max, which takes itself very seriously, but then there's these like moments of almost kind of cartoony sort of violence.
Yeah.
Death Race 2000 really leans into it all the way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm thinking about the scene you mentioned with the old people. If I remember correctly, Frankenstein actually goes behind the hedges where all the nurses are, and you just see nurses' bodies getting flung up into the air.
It does turn into something out of like a Looney Tunes.
Yeah, there's that exactly. I believe there's a very Chuck Jones sort of element to the way that these deaths are handled.
I would also say what pushes it back into into exploitation is boobage. Just casual boobage throughout the whole thing.
Yes.
There's non-sexy boobage, just boobage happening in the middle of a normal conversation.
Just boobs.
Just boobs.
Just boobs. All right, so we're at halftime. And this is the point where Jeff usually tells you to please download, rate, and review us. I'm not going to tell you that. You should do whatever you want to do. And what you should want to do is download, rate, and review us. Because it's really, and I say this honestly and truly, that helps us out as a podcast. It helps other people find us. It helps out with wherever you happen to be listening to this on, whatever podcast app you happen to be on. It helps get people to know who we are and understand that we're doing something that's quality. And we appreciate every review and every positive rating that we've got so far. And you should also follow us on social media, whether that's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram. We love hearing from you. A lot of the times we'll like to include your choices on the show when we get a chance to. We've had topics that have been suggested by people in our social media sphere, and even had people come on the show. You don't have to come on the show. I can understand why you wouldn't.
Please
Dear
come on the
God,
show.
I don't want to come on most weeks, but here we are. But please get involved with us. We love interacting with the people who listen to the show, and that's about it. Yeah. So we are back, and I believe, Jeff, it is time for your third.
Okay. A repeat rental from okay, kids, there was this time when you wanted a video. You didn't just
Please explain this to us, Uncle Jeff.
You didn't
Play the missive music in the background.
you didn't just click a few clicks on your app on your television. You had to go to a thing called a video store. And sometimes it was this little tiny 10 by 10 building that was attached maybe to like a shoe shine place or a dry cleaners. Sometimes it was a small kiosk in the middle of your grocery store. That's what it was when I was in college at University of Kansas. And we were known for, on a Friday night, for getting this film called Gator Bait.
Oh, wow.
Which is in the exploitation category. And I must have seen Gator Bait 10 times. And it is definitely a exploitation thing taking place in the swamps of Louisiana. It was shot in Thibodaux, Louisiana. And it featured Playboy Playmate Claudia Jennings. This woman played this Bayou Jezebel. Her character's named Desiree, whose animal magnetism drives men wild. And Claudia Jennings was pretty darn gorgeous in her Daisy Dukes and her ripped shirt. And the Cajun poacher wants to get her because he wants to make her his wife, and the sheriff wants to get her because she's doing illegal stuff back there. All these people in the swamps are trying to get her. She somehow, in the middle of the swamps, has an unlimited supply of makeup because no matter how many times she falls in the swamp, it seems like she gets out and her hair is completely dry and she's got rouge and mascara and all this stuff on. But she was freaking gorgeous. When researching it, this was in 1974, filmmakers Beverly and Ferd Sebastian are kind of these auteurs of bad exploitation films. They did a rocksploitation film in Rocktober Blood, which sounds like two U2 albums, I think, kind of
Right.
mashed together. But they did a lot of exploitation films. They did like a WWE, like a Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling exploitation film called like Angels of the Ring. And then Ferd found Jesus after a near-death heart attack, and he runs the website 2jesus.org.
Oh.
So this is
one of my favorite websites.
Yeah, that's right. I frequent it. So, yeah. So I love this. And it even had, like, as a theater student kind of studying Shakespeare, there's kind of a Lear-like kind of thing where there's a father and he's got three sons who are all kind of in different stages of devotion to their father and stuff like that. So, pretty great film.
Did you ever see the sequel, Gator Bait 2,
No.
Cajun Justice?
No, no.
I feel like you're really missing out on this. So
I know they can include
Yeah,
the stories.
14 years later. It took a long time to hone that script.
I think on Gatorbait 2 or the deep. I wasn't able to see this, but there's a DVD extra where Ferd says he once walked up to Walt Disney and asked him how to make movies or something. So Walt must have told him some weird shit because he went up and
that's like Ed Wood. When
Yeah,
Ed
he
Wood
goes to
comes
Orson
up
Welles.
to see Orson Welles, except even trashier somehow. So I have to ask, in this movie, does Gator Bait, whatever her character
Desiree, yeah.
Desiree Thibodeau,
Yeah.
does her character get naked?
Yeah, I think she's doing some.
Or is this one of the ones
bathing.
where sometimes you'll see this in the exploitation movie where every other female character gets naked, but the lead female character is the only one who doesn't.
Oh, I recall.
You'll see that from time to time.
Yeah, I think as Playboy Playmate, I think that was almost part of her contract. Like,
Yeah, I would imagine there would be difficult to avoid that at that point.
Yeah.
She was in a ton of movies that, just reading her filmography, and she died young at 29.
Oh, wow.
Just reading her filmography, The Man Who Fell to Earth,
Oh, wow.
Sisters of Death, The Great Texas Dynamite Chase.
Ooh.
That's just like, that is just you throw words in a hat.
Yeah, that sounds like a Troy
Let's
McClure.
see what comes out. The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, yes.
You might remember
Moonshine
me.
Country Express, Death Sport, and
Which is
Fast-
not Death Race.
No.
Totally different.
Hold on, let's see. Death Sport. 1,000 years from tomorrow, after the neutron wars, the world is divided into a barbaric collection of city-states surrounded by waste. She has a great career.
Does everyone do the neutron dance there? Oh, God.
Not much to say about that. Sam
I
Gilman.
do love your history of, like, that was the one that you just chose.
Oh,
to
God.
Yeah, I
go
think
with.
everyone's got
Yeah.
one where it's just like, this movie is so dumb,
Yeah.
I'm going to like learn every line.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
There was a moment where T.J. Bracken, the patriarch, who's King Lear, who was a contemporary with Marlon Brando, he claims. He also claims to have been an artist for Marvel Comics. He's bemoaning the death of his inbred redneck Bayou son, and he said something like Leroy, they said you was touched. And so anytime any of our friends did something idiotic, we'd tell them, you're touched. I think you're touched.
Michael, what's your next pick?
My next pick is a movie that literally I've seen once and decided I never want to see it again. I have no...
Your wedding film. Oh, nuts.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, I've never seen it. I'm too scared.
It is a movie that was right in the middle of... It was like, it's like pre-slasher. It's like all the things that they tried to do in, A Nightmare on Elm Street, but like just scary and gross and low budget and awful. And I remember seeing it once and was like, I just never want to see this again.
Yeah.
It's about a hitchhiker who joins up with a bunch of friends who run into a family of cannibals led by Leatherface, the titular wielder of the chainsaw. And it's just horrible to watch. And there are movies that are out there for people who want to just see awful things.
Yeah.
And it's funny that I have no interest in seeing just like
Yeah.
depravity and just awfulness.
Uh-huh.
And the only thing I do like about the end of the movie is that like Leatherface doesn't die. He's like shaking his fists, shaking his chainsaw at the people that get away. And that's all you can hope to do is get away. You barely survive.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. There's just a whole genre of like these awful slasher.
Yeah. Gore porn. Yeah.
And this movie was originally marketed as based on a true story
Ed Gein,
because they took a little bit of elements of Ed Gein, the serial killer's life, and incorporated them into the Leatherface character.
Wow.
Which that's a good exploitation sort of thing to do, by the way, is to try to market it as based on true events, because that will get people kind of freaked out even more. So, did you watch like Halloween and Friday the 13th and those type of movies at all growing up?
Not growing up. I've seen him once. I was a teenager and a little bit older. But even then, it's just a genre that like never caught on with me.
Yeah.
Like I would enjoy like the spoofs of them. Like I enjoyed Scream.
Yeah.
But like never to go back, and I have some vague memories of watching Friday the 13th part. Not Friday the 13th. What was the one with Friday? A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Was it Friday?
The Dream Warriors.
Was it Friday with Ice Cube?
I have a lot of memories of watching Friday, but A Nightmare on Elm Street, like part 3, The Dream Warriors, over at like a friend's older brother's house, and was just like, I'm too young to watch this.
Yeah.
VHS.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't know. This movie in particular was just like realistic enough in terms of just the way it was shot.
Yeah.
It was just all up in your face. It was, there's no, like the special effects are just too grim.
There's some stuff in, remember True Detective Season 1 where you go into the home of the serial killer and you go, he doesn't have to be murdering anybody. I just don't want to be in this room with this creepazoid.
A Swiffer and a wet Swiffer.
Yeah.
I have not seen this floor in quite a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. So the remake, Rob Zombie did a remake too, right? Didn't he?
Yeah, he did a remake, I believe. There was one that had like Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey. There was like they tried to reboot it in the mid 90s before any of them were famous. It was kind of like this famous, like, ooh, we're really embarrassed by this sort of movie thing. And it actually, Tobe Hooper tried to get this cut down to a PG rating.
How the hell?
Well, he cut down a lot of the gore. Apparently, it was even gorier than the final product ended up being.
Had the musical number.
Had a musical number. Had a lovable alien involved. No,
What?
but it still came out as an R anyway, which of course it always was going to be.
Yeah.
All right, great choice, Jeff. Final choice.
Okay, this is my final, and this was the first in my heart. And I think it's an example of something in which the film was made as an exploitation and has been elevated in hindsight to not be perceived as so, but A Hard Day's Night in the rocksploitation genre. 1964 British musical comedy directed by Richard Lester, starring the guys who, in our last episode of our podcast, needed to get Eric Clapton in the studio for them all to get along together. Well, these were the earlier days when they were all getting along just fine, thank you. And even though they were going from a room to a train to a room to a car to a room to a room, they were still having fun doing it.
What a delightful movie.
Oh, it's so infectious and fun.
Rewatchability, 100% on this.
Yeah.
It is, 50 some odd years old now, 55 years old, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you can still just plop it in, and it's just the energy just sort of like bounds off of the screen.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I have such a.
They should color it though. Colorize it up.
Yeah,
that's true.
It's a shame it's stuck in black and white. The credit to Richard Lester for not only coaching them into the world that they were going to be filming, kind of an improvisational one, but also having the ear for Liverpudlian Scouse kind of dialect and being able to write it, because supposedly he hung around Liverpool and was able to.
Yeah, he did. And he followed them around, just sort of like seeing what they were like.
Yeah.
Going on tour and playing gigs and just hanging out.
Yeah. And, lucky for him, it's like, trying to make the Beatles funny is like trying to make a cat cute or something like that. They were already pretty clever guys,
right.
And they already had chemistry, which was why they were such a great act.
And if it wasn't for this movie, we never would have had the film career of Ringo Starr.
No.
Would not have had Caveman or The Magic Christian or...
Yeah. So, yes, it was an exploitation film because it was trying to capitalize a low-budget exploitation movie to milk the latest brief musical craze for all that it's worth. And it's a weird thing to think about now, but this rock was really only about 7, 8, 9 years old. And so not only are the industry trying to really use this film as a way to sell a record, because they knew we're going to lose money off the movie, but we'll make plenty of money off the soundtrack. So they were so anxious to crank out Beatles records that they made this movie essentially to try to support the sales of the soundtrack. But at this time, the industry thought rock was going to be over any minute now. So we had to make all this money while we can. And that's another reason why the Beatles were so, why this movie even came, the plot of this movie even came because Brian Epstein, their manager, was working them like slaves because he never knew at what minute their career was going to be over. So he had to make as much money off these idiots as he could. That's why they were relentlessly putting on shows and recording and rehearsing. And
Yeah, your rock exploitation movies, that goes back to as long as there's been rock and roll.
Yeah.
There's been a
Blackboard Jungle,
movie
yeah.
producer trying to milk it for every
yeah.
last buck,
Yeah.
thinking that it's a fad.
yeah.
Whether it's Blackboard Jungle or A Girl Can't Help It or et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. And after this movie came out, then you started to get the genre of the British invasion exploitation films. This came out, obviously Help came out after this.
Yeah.
The Herman's Hermits
Oh,
had
they
a
had a
movie.
movie. I didn't
Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter,
Oh,
based
that's
off
great.
of that, I believe. So yeah, you wound up hitting a lot of that. I think there's a Cliff Richards in the Shadows did at least
Yeah.
one movie at
Yeah.
some point. So you wound up this wound up becoming its own little like mini genre.
Yeah, and it's not that there weren't films about musicians beforehand because there
Right.
were. It's really just kind of the same thing, new genre. But I think the fastness or the cycle was going so rapidly that they knew they suspected there was going to be a new flavor of the month any minute now, so they had to crank this thing out. But the things that it also inspired, spy films in general, like the Monkees television show,
100%, yeah.
music videos
Music
in
videos.
general. So I just, like you said, I also read that if you've seen the film Madagascar,
Yes.
which as parents you might have, there are 4 penguins in it, right? Am I
Yes.
right? That one. Those were originally in their own movie about essentially a rock group.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
That's why they look and act like they do because they were the Beatles essentially.
Wow.
Running around doing fun.
Never would
stuff.
have got that from the Madagascar movie.
Yeah.
They must have ditched that at some point in the production of it because
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
They
but
pulled
I
up-
could see where they would go.
They pulled them out of the development of this other thing and put them into Madagascar.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anybody who's seen Jojo Rabbit?
I have not seen it
You've
yet.
not seen it. It opens up with a kind of a allegory of the esteem with which one certain fascist dictator was held by the people of Germany as being on par with Beatlemania.
Helmut Kohl.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So it's kind of cool.
Cool.
All right.
All right, let's wrap this sucker
Wrap
up,
it.
Michael. I got
Wrap
another exploitation podcast to do in 20 minutes.
Well, I definitely approached this topic from someone that didn't spend a lot of time within the exploitation film community.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't watch a ton.
Yeah.
I didn't have that sort of lust.
Lucky you.
But what I did find interesting was just the phenomenon of the 2007 film Grindhouse.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Phenomenon is a word that I'm sure they wanted to have push it forward. But I love the idea that these people spend, Quentin Tarantino and what was it?
Robert Rodriguez.
Rodriguez spent so much money to lose so much money.
Yes.
And it felt so fitting that the thing that you guys fell in love with as this behind the scenes or like, low quality, terrible movies that are, zeroed in on a very specific community of people that want to see it.
Yeah.
Or pinpoint, people want to see black crime movies or they want to see like sex movies. And to go out and get an all-star cast to do 2 films, bill it as a double feature, and just run the gamut of having all these special fancy trailers for other potential films that will never exist. Hobo with a Shotgun, although I think Hobo with a Shotgun was eventually made. Machete, although Machete was made.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Don't.
White meat, dark meat, all will be carved.
I love that their love, they tried to push it out as an event.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to see it.
Was it really a flop?
Apparently, it cost between $53 and $67 million, and it made $25 million.
Costs a lot of money to look
wow.
that cheap.
Yeah.
To quote Dolly Parton.
Wow.
But big cast, star-studded. That's the one thing that traditional exploitation films don't have. They don't have an expensive litany of people that are in them. They have nobodies. They have the former Playboy playmate as the star.
If you don't want to lose your shirt, don't bring one.
But the films were so very true to form to see what a film would be that you rented over and over. Whether the film was damaged, and they kept that kind of damaged quality within the film, where they had cut scenes, just poorly edited, or you just take the basic, revenge plot of Death Proof of these stunt women or these women getting revenge on stuntman Mike. Very basic plots. Except Planet Terror is kind of
Planet Terror is kind of a mess.
But it has a Rose McGowan with a machine gun leg. Like crazy stuff that you would never see. I don't know. I just like the idea of films that were made by people who genuinely love this thing, and that those were a failure.
Yes,
I think that's fascinating.
That's the most ironic thing you could possibly have, is the fact that this genre that was designed to just make a little bit of money wound up costing them a lot of money. That's great. All right, time to make some choices, boys and girls. So I'm going to go with Blackula, primarily because we never did the kickball team Blackula's Balls.
Yeah, it was also going to be potentially called the Count Blackula's. I can't remember if I ever settled on an actual name, whether it was going to be Blackula's Balls or the Count Blackula's.
We definitely went back and forth.
Oh, well.
I love the idea of Mad Max. So, Jeff, you're getting points for that.
Sweet.
I love A Hard Day's Night. The idea of this being a rock exploitation film, it's not something that you normally think of as a exploitation genre, but it absolutely was one. And my favorite movie out of this list, at least, well, not favorite movie, but most representative exploitation movie out of this list, Death Race 2000. The one that I would have chosen if I did a Borglum's bag would have been Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS.
Sure.
The Nazi exploitation film. Also a little bit of a mixture of the women in prison.
Is that a
genre.
Mary Warrenoff too?
No, that was, oh boy, what's her name? I can't remember the actress's name, but she was like a Russ Myers type.
Okay.
So, all right, this has been fun, guys. Enjoyed sitting in on the throne. Now it's time for me to gingerly step off before the whole thing collapses. And this is where I thank you guys for listening. And check back next week when Michael will be ascending to such great heights to lord it all over us.
The topic next week is vanity projects.
Woo!
This will be.
Can't see what you guys come up with.
I am 100% the Mount Rushmore podcast is going to be a vanity project I choose. So, anyway, thank you all for listening. This has been Richard.
This is Jeff.
Michael.